Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Boy, we got a lot to cover this morning. Hunter Biden, of course, entering that guilty plea. I don't know, it's not really anticlimactic. We're going to talk about it. We'll also be talking about the Harris campaign, the Trump campaign, a couple New York State issues. Let's start here. This is a comment that I received after yesterday's program. Morning, Frank. Well, good morning. We're going to count it. Just got a text from Vance stating that Trump is being sentenced. Several things come to mind. If Trump has to serve jail time, will we still be able to vote for him? Yes. Will Vance run the country until any sentence is served? That I don't know. That is a good question. I don't know that answer. I would think that Trump still gets to run the country if he wins presidency. I guess at that point pardons himself. I know this is one of those mind games a lot of people in the media play. I don't know if there's a clear-cut answer. I will try to get a clear-cut answer for you, but I don't know if I trust too many sources on this. Because it's so unprecedented. Ugh, that term. Anyway, does not matter to me. So as long as I can still vote for Trump and against the ding-dong wishy-washy Democrats. Okay, thank you. Another thing is that even though I am retired and therefore on a fixed income, I would like to support Trump's campaign by making a donation. However, I am hesitant to respond to the plethora of texts and emails I get asking for such, because I don't know if they are really from his said campaign. So I tried to call the number associated with the text, but the call failed. Do you know of any trustworthy site where I could make a donation? One where the donation goes directly to Trump and not some criminal. I totally understand your concern. You've got to be extremely careful on that. I would say your best plan of action would be to go directly to DonaldJTrump.com. That will pop up with numerous opportunities to donate, whether that's through merchandise. You can buy merchandise, of course. You've seen the hats, even buy yard signs, things like that. Or right there, just direct donation. If that does not help, if you're not maybe technically savvy, though it says you have email and text and things like that, I can try and I can contact, the Steuben County Republican chairman, who happens to be Joe Sempolinski, and I can ask him where you can donate that money. And thank you for that question. Same thing goes. I think with Kamala Harris, just to play fair here, her website, not that I'm suggesting that this viewer wants that, obviously, I believe she goes through, at first it was going through a political action committee. Okay, here it is. Hers is Kamala Harris. So there you go. So now you've got both sides, whoever you want to donate to. But to this viewer's question specifically at DonaldJTrump.com. Okay, I asked this question the other day, and I've not heard from anybody, and I am guilty of not knowing either. I've not seen Reagan, the new movie about Ronald Reagan. If you have, please let me know. I've heard mixed reviews. Obviously, from the mainstream media, it's hated. It was just too patriotic, too pro-Reagan. I even saw some more conservative leaning that said maybe it was, I'm not going to say not entertaining, but just not what they were looking for. But Rich Lowry has a very good review this morning saying the Reagan movie seals his status as one of America's great statesmen. And he's got a good point at the beginning. He says, first they oppose you and condescend to you. Then they reluctantly conclude that you had more on the ball than they thought. After that, they concede your achievements. And finally, they make a glowing feature-length movie about you. This has been the trajectory of Ronald Reagan and his reputation. Although the new film Reagan wasn't made by his erstwhile detractors. And that's why the detractors are the ones writing the reviews most places that are panning it. They don't want to see a pro-Reagan movie, especially at this time of year, going into elections. Reagan covers all the greatest hits of the Republicans' life and career with no famous line or episode left out. And it's hard to exaggerate his political talents or successes, as Rich Lowry says. Reagan had a good grasp on economics and history, owing to a solid, if not elite, American education for his time. This was supplemented by a lifetime of reading and working out what he thought. The movie has Reagan at one point reading a book late at night and his wife Nancy asking him if he'd rather spend time with Whittaker Chambers or her. This is starring Randy Quaid, by the way. And Rich Lowry goes through the history of Reagan, which I don't think we need to do here. We have astute, well-informed viewers. Like Lincoln or Truman, Reagan belongs to all of us now, and Reagan, the movie, shows why. So if you do happen to see that, I would love to hear your review. Because as I've said here, you're pundits, you are commentators, you're analysts, and now I'm asking you to be movie critics. Okay, so that's my first question posed this morning. Also, another question I would pose, do you think, I think it's Jonathan Turley that has a couple pieces on this. I really enjoy reading Jonathan Turley's take on things when it's obviously regarding the law. He believes that the guilty plea was just hey, let's get this over with so my father can still pardon me. I think there's a point to be had there. If this got dragged out, not much time left in Biden's presidency, in his term. And, whether or not you think, and if you're the mainstream media, you think Harris has this easily. But even if you're talking 17 years in prison, in jail, you probably don't want to take that bet of who's going to win. Because I got a feeling a pardon's not coming if Trump's in the White House. So do you say, yep, I'm guilty, I made these mistakes, guilty on all charges, in hopes to speed this along so that the president can pardon his son? I think that's a good question. Okay, first, before that topic, which we're going to be bringing up early in the program. I should also do a little housekeeping here, huh? We are going to be talking with the Gaffer District today about Harvest Fest. Now, Harvest Fest is coming up on the 20th and 21st of September. I just wanted you to be prepared if you want to invite family and friends up to visit that week so you can learn all about it. It's a very fun event that they offer here in the Gaffer District, meaning on Market Street. And on Monday, this is very important. Please spread the word on this. Kelly Mormon from the Finger Lakes VA is going to join us. September is Suicide Awareness Month, and she's going to tell us how veterans in need of mental health care, substance abuse care, how they can get help, what the VA offers, what you as maybe a family member that's dealing with this from your vet, what you need to know. So that's on Monday. So please spread the word. Very important message on Monday's broadcast. Okay. Douglas Murray has a piece at the New York Post today. And we talk so often about the protests on college campuses and in the streets. Well, family of American hostage in Gaza has been shocked to learn of the anti-Semitism here in New York. And Douglas Murray says there are plenty of bad things happening in Kathy Hochul's New York, which we'll get to some of those in a little bit, whether it's her former aide being accused of being a Chinese agent, whether she's doubled down. We're going to get to this. We brought it up yesterday. We asked the question, will she allow fracking? Now that the standard bearer of her party, the leader of her party, Kamala Harris, has now said, never mind what I said in 2019 about banning fracking. I'm all for it now that Pennsylvania is a swing state that's very crucial to the White House. So if she's fine with fracking, is Governor Hochul fine with fracking? We learned yesterday she is not. We'll hopefully get into a little more depth there, but I continue. But one thing that has become increasingly clear is how willing Hochul is to allow racism and bigotry to thrive in this city. So he's speaking specifically of New York City, and it has been allowed. She talked tough about maybe a mask mandate, and we predicted at the time, rightfully so, that she did that because at that time there was threats being made on the subway, and there's a very viral post that was going around of someone in the subway in a mask saying, raise your hand if you're Jewish, or I think they said Zionist or whatever. Really intimidation tactics, very much like the intimidation tactics Jewish students, unfortunately, are experiencing on college campuses in New York. So she said, yeah, we're going to take a strong look at that. And if you recall the program at the time, I said, do you think we'll ever hear about this again? And have we? Anyway, so is she allowing this? Well, last week, the terrible news came through that another American citizen had been murdered by Hamas. California-born Hirsch Goldberg Poland was held hostage in Gaza for almost a year. He was kidnapped from that music festival on October 7th. Last week, as the Israeli Defense Forces moved in to save him, Hamas executed Hirsch and 5 other hostages. A day after this news broke, you may recall, we mentioned it on the program, huge pro-Hamas protests in New York. Thousands of people supporting Hamas. And yesterday we had that story from Chicago. Was it the Tribune? I can't remember where. The journalist, quote-unquote journalist, had the line that between Hamas and Netanyahu, if he could pick one to get rid of, he'd pick Netanyahu. Think about that. Now, that's in Chicago. I know we're talking about New York, but this is just showing, highlighting what we're dealing with here. So what this all boils down to, and there's pictures, and there's basically an exclusive interview where Douglas Murray talked with the family of the American hostage in Gaza. It was a couple of other New Yorkers, Ronan and Orna Nutra. They're the parents of Omer Nutra. His parents were both Holocaust survivors, and in Israel he realized the truth that many Jews realize, which is that the world's only Jewish state needs to defend itself. He decided he wanted to do his part, and he joined the IDF. Listen to this. He had almost finished his 3 years and was meant to start up at Binghamton, right down the road, Binghamton University this year. But he missed his enrollment because last October, Hamas kidnapped him from near the Gaza border and dragged him into Gaza. There's been no word of him ever since. And I don't know if Binghamton has released a statement on this. I don't know if Binghamton's had protests or not. It seems to be pretty prevalent on most college campuses. You may wonder why we have not heard of these kidnapped Americans. The Biden-Harris administration say they're doing everything they can to return them, but the silence is deafening. So Omer's mother said to Douglas Murray on October 7th, not only 1,200 Israelis were murdered and slaughtered and raped, but also 45 Americans, and 12 Americans were taken hostage. We don't feel that the outcry is out there. We don't feel that there's a sense of outrage. I think a lot of propaganda out there that's twisting the events and telling the story all upside down. This lack of knowledge, and a lot of people are just buying into it. So they're shocked, and I'm not going to go through the whole interview and just quote. You can find this for yourself at the New York Post by Douglas Murray. But the city has changed so much, she said. I think it's been building up. I think anti-Semitism has been on the rise. I think people have been crying out for a few years now. And I agree. When you have Van Jones, well, and Douglas Murray ends with, every decent American should be fighting alongside them. As Van Jones, I quote him quite consistently on this program for this one line, that the Democrat Party is now marbled with anti-Semitic, I should say, bigotry. We're going to talk, when we come back, just quickly about what Trump said at the Republican Jewish Coalition, his appearance yesterday, and then a couple other things, and then get right into Hunter Biden, and again, Harris's campaign, Trump's campaign, and so much more. Just getting started and already running late. We're going to have a good Friday morning here. I hope you'll stay tuned. Let me know what you think. Keep those comments coming in. We'll be right back. And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you for joining us this morning. So yesterday, Donald Trump spoke virtually to the Republican Jewish Coalition. He said, Kamala Harris is the candidate of the forces who want to destroy Western civilization and Israel. I'm the candidate of those who want to defend Western civilization and defend Israel. You're not going to have an Israel if she becomes president. Israel will no longer exist. Now, Trump was met with cheers and roaring applause from his eager audience when he pledged that his administration would keep America safe and make sure that Israel is with us for thousands of years. He also went on to say only a deeply sick political party here in America would make common cause with those who sympathize with such evil. And they are, referencing the Hamas sympathy that we're seeing in these protests and at events. So that's just the time with our last story. Okay, moving along. Hunter Biden enters that shocking guilty plea in the $1.4 million tax evasion case. The first son now faces up to 17 years in prison. He was found guilty on felony gun wraps back in June. Well, he entered the shock plea to all 9 charges against him in order to avoid yet another embarrassing trial that would have centered on his penchant for strippers, luxury hotels, exotic cars, etc. He said in a statement, "I will not subject my family to more pain, more invasion of privacy, and needless embarrassment. For all I've put them through over the years, I can spare them this. And so I've decided to plead guilty." This was pretty shocking. Biden lawyer Ab Lowell blindsided the feds early Thursday. They wanted to enter a Alford plea. That's kind of a little known technicality that would have allowed him to plead guilty but maintain his innocence. That's a heck of a plea. That shouldn't be so little known. Guilty, but I'm still innocent. Okay. That was denied to him. Prosecutor Leo Wise says Hunter Biden is not innocent. Hunter Biden is guilty. There's overwhelming evidence of the defendant's guilt. So you're looking at a potential 17 years. Now, according to many Republicans, this is vindication after the plea. Representative Warren Davidson told Fox News that he believes the plea absolutely affirms the accusations and findings that GOP lawmakers have levied against the first family since Biden took office. Quote, "It's also vindication for the whistleblowers, accusing Hunter's defenders of trying to wreck their careers after being courageous and being those whistleblowers." It's interesting when whistleblowers are heroes and when they're pariahs, isn't it? You be the judge of when they're heroes. Davidson said of the Biden potentially pardoning his son, he said, quote, "I think it would be an abuse of that power for the president to do that, but I think a lot of people will be surprised if Joe Biden doesn't." And Jonathan Turley suggests that that's why the shock guilty plea was made, to kind of rush this process along. And we'll get to what Jonathan Turley said exactly here in just a moment. I don't want to paraphrase what he had to say. So this is vindication. Well, let's say this is what Jonathan Turley has a couple pieces, so bear with me. But he said, "Sorry, Hunter, there's no nice way to say you're guilty." But this is something he's avoided his whole life, which is accountability. 5 years ago, Biden had to explain the rule to ABC News reporter Amy Robach, who had the audacity to ask about his history. Biden instructed the TV journalist to, quote, "say it nicer." Yeah, you remember that? And that's a very Biden-esque thing, just like his father. To when you finally get a fair question, to get angry. The president's son spent his adult life with his father, his family, political allies, and reporters, enabling every corrupt deal and human debauchery. Even at his plea hearing, Biden was closely shadowed by his so-called, what they call sugar brother, Kevin Morris, who bankrolled his lavish lifestyle for years. And I guess he was going broke. Remember, his own daughter came out and said going broke because of his friendship with Hunter. So they tried to enter the Alford plea, a kind of a no contest plea. However, as a criminal defense attorney, Jonathan Turley said, "I've never heard of a defendant seeking an Alford plea without previously discussing the option with prosecutors. These pleas ordinarily require the approval of prosecutors and Justice Department rules requiring the approval of high-ranking officials or the Attorney General himself." So they were kind of shocked, and it was quickly turned down. So as he says here, there's no nice way to say that you're guilty. So finally, Hunter Biden, after all these years, being held to account. But this goes back to the kind of the cockiness, if you will, of his lawyers. Remember when he had that sweetheart plea deal, just that sweetheart plea deal, and when there's a little pushback on one issue, Hunter's lawyers got cocky and said, "Rip it up then." And they did. And that's where we're at today. So it was strikingly belated, but Biden could have avoided over a year of such needless embarrassment by pleading guilty last year. A plea at the time would have secured real benefits for him in sentencing recommendations. Instead, he waited literally until the start of his trial to enter a plea at the very last moment when it offered the least benefit to himself or his family. Yet the long road to guilt did bring clarity for others as well as Biden. There were no more of the mantras of how my son has done nothing wrong. Remember how Biden said that? And some of this has to do with the fact that Biden isn't running for re-election as well. So we're going to tell you a little bit more about what Jonathan Turley had to say, but I'm going to just keep running late. We do have the street cleaners out there, so I apologize if there's a little background noise for a little bit. Again, we're going to hear from the Gaffer District a little bit later on. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Comment from a viewer. Friday to look back at this week for Corning talk show host. So I ask, what is the one thing in this past week that surprised you the most? Yes, think. I tried to think during break. I don't know if this is a trick question. If you're thinking specifically of something, I'm probably going to miss the most glaring thing. I mean, I guess the Hunter Biden making the guilty plea was pretty surprising. One of the more breaking news stories. I mean, a lot of different levels of surprise. I mean, I think the term is overused because I could say, boy, I'm surprised the media doesn't care that Harris isn't giving interviews or press conferences, but I'm not surprised by that, of course. But it's a kind of a phrase that we all use perhaps too much. So I'm not really sure. I was surprised by the protester that we had when Joe Sempolinski joined us on Tuesday, right after Labor Day, still wiping the sleep out of our eyes after a long weekend. And we were joined by a protester with a sign that said Trump for prison 2024. That was kind of surprising. That was the first. So I guess on the personal level, that was it. At the national level, the Hunter Biden plea of guilty was pretty surprising. But I'm sure I'm glancing over something, trying to look back at the week. One thing I know I'm not surprised about is the generosity of the viewers who have been buying so many tickets for the Salvation Army fundraiser this Sunday. How's that for a segue? I'll answer the next part of your question in just a second. But so many people contacting me to purchase tickets or going to our friends at Brown Cigar Store or stopping at the Salvation Army on Denison Parkway to purchase tickets for Sunday's fundraiser. It's a picnic, a benefit picnic to celebrate 140 years. Yes, the Salvation Army is celebrating 140 years here in Corning. And that's from 1 to 4 at Nazareth Civic Center, again, this Sunday. So if you still want to buy tickets, not too late. I'll be here at work for quite a bit. So if you see me, knock on the window, I can sell you some tickets, or stop at Brown's, or go to the Salvation Army, or just join us on Sunday. There'll be tickets on sale at the door. They're just $15. Great food provided by Corning Catering. Okay, so the next question, and if that didn't answer your question, please, and if you could think of a better one, let me know. I'll read it. What was the thing that surprised you the most this week? There's got to be something. There's got to be something I'm forgetting, and it's probably right there in front of my face. You know how that works. But the next part of your question is, do you look for any surprise danger on September 11th? I think we all are concerned about that every September 11th. We pray to God nothing happens, of course, but we have to be mindful. You know, we've talked in the past, especially with the open porous border and known terrorists or with terrorist ties have crossed the border that we've caught or are still looking for. But what about the ones that we don't know? So, of course, that's a major concern. So we've said on this program before, we can't have a September 10th mindset that all is hunky-dory. We have to be vigilant with a September 12th mindset. So I pray to God nothing happens, of course, but I think every September 11th, any American that lived through it always has a heavy heart that day. So thank you. But to the first part, if that did not answer your question, please let me know. So back to Hunter Biden. Jonathan Turley believes, and I would like to hear your opinion, that Hunter Biden is betting on a pardon from his dad. Hunter just showed the perils of playing the game of chicken with yourself. For months, many of us have marveled at the sight of Hunter careening towards a cliff while declaring publicly that he was prepared to go all the way. The Justice Department was never going over the cliff because they had nothing to gain or lose in an open and shut case in Delaware and California. There was never a serious question of convicting Hunter of these crimes, just a will of the Justice Department to secure them. And we don't have to go through all the history, but Jonathan Turley, I think, loves, it's almost like a gloating level. I like Jonathan Turley a lot, about when Hunter's lawyers said, just rip it up. Unwilling to accept anything but the sweetheart deal, Hunter's defense counsel told the prosecutor in court to just rip it up. They did, and Wise was forced to actually prosecute Hunter. This could have all been over with if his lawyer did not get cocky and, hey, do you know who we are? We're getting the most sweetheart of sweetheart deals. And if you remember that deal at the time, it wasn't just essentially forgiving Hunter of all these past crimes. It was forgiving him of potential future crimes. It was the most sweetheart of sweetheart deals. And they made one little change. They said, just rip it up. Because, again, they're Biden. They didn't have to deal with this. According to the Justice Department, Wise continued to try to cut a plea bargain with Hunter, but was rebuffed by the defense. Then they went to Delaware, the home of the Bidens, and tried to convince a sympathetic jury that Hunter was a drug addict who was not responsible for his actions. It failed in spectacular fashion with a conviction on all counts. Hunter then floored it for the California cliff on the tax charges as the Justice Department and most of us watched confused about how he was trying to intimidate. He hit the brakes as the trial was beginning. Hunter has succeeded in putting himself in the worst possible position for a plea. He waited until he had little to trade and reportedly did not even inform the prosecutors of his decision. But it gets worse. If he had agreed to a less generous plea deal last year, he could have secured a recommended sentence on both the gun and tax charges. Instead, he will go into the sentencing with a past criminal record, an aggravating factor that could reduce the benefits of the belated plea. In the end, Hunter had nothing to offer, nothing to bargain. He pleaded guilty to all 9 counts. This decision may still be based more on political than legal calculations. Hunter was almost certain to be convicted, but it would have taken time as his father's administration and, important to note here, as we've been asking this morning, and pardon authority wanes. So you've only got a few months, 4 months, 5 months, before he could no longer have that power of the pardon, meaning his father. If Hunter still hopes for a presidential pardon, the chances of such executive action is dramatically improved after a sentencing. The White House rarely considers pardons for a trial and sentencing. Indeed, they often wait for appeals to run their course. Moreover, a demand for jail time seems likely from the Justice Department given his history, and it is equally likely to be granted. If that sentence is lengthy, it will add pressure on President Biden to take action. And you know what? They'll actually paint him in the media as a hero, as a sympathetic father that has so much empathy and has been through so much tragedy that when he saw the lengthy sentencing, he had to pardon him. I know he said he wasn't going to, but he has to pardon his son. If President Biden does violate his promise not to pardon Hunter, it would not be a surprise for many. Yeah, because he's not running for re-election, so at this point, it does not matter. What's the worst that can happen to him? I mean, he's already had everybody in his party stab him in the back. He's kind of down in the dumps right now. So what's a little bit of, and I don't even think it'll give him negative coverage. I think it'll be praised as being a good father. So remember who was it that came out and said, stop talking about Hunter? Biden loves his son. No one's suggesting he didn't. But so I think it'll be easy for him to pardon Hunter. In 2022, Jonathan Turley wrote that the president could resign or withdraw as a candidate and pardon Hunter. I refer to this as break the glass option. He would end his political career with an act as a father, which some would condemn, but most would understand. The plea also avoided the massive influence peddling operation of the Biden family from being aired in open court. The refusal of the Justice Department to charge Hunter as an unregistered foreign agent stands in flagrant contradiction to past and current cases under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. None of this explains the logic of Hunter's criminal defense strategy. A legal one-man game of chicken is certainly engrossing to watch, but leaves most lawyers wincing rather than flinching as the spectacle unfolds. That's Jonathan Turley. I skipped over some of it so you can find that full piece. I believe it was at Fox News. So we've got to take another short break. Then we'll get back to, I'm not going to, trust me, we're not going to focus on Hunter all morning, but there are a couple of quick just side notes. Then we're going to get into the campaigns. A little bit here about Liz Cheney, because Liz Cheney now is a hero, of course, and I don't think she's aware of this, but if she does do something in support of Republicans, a full-throated type of conservative support, not necessarily Trump, just Republicans, they will turn on her on a dime. You could ask, well, he passed, but John McCain had that. Romney's had that. It's amazing. But she loves being the brave warrior. speaking truth to power. So we'll talk just a little bit about her, but mostly on Harris and Trump, and perhaps a little bit about New York State issues. So stay with us. Just getting started. And we're already halfway through, a little over halfway through, hour number 1. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I was asked before the last break what surprised me the most this week. The best I could come up with was Hunter Biden's plea deal, and on a personal level, the protester during former Congressman Joe Sempolinski's live interview. And so the viewer who sent that in responded, "Thank you for your answer to our question. And great job, as so much has happened every day." Yes, you know, that's what intimidated me about the question, if I'm being honest. I'm thinking there's some glaring answer out there because so much is happening. I mean, that is something about the 24/7 news cycle, that something that was a major story on Monday is nearly forgotten by Friday. But I hope you have a great weekend too, and I'll try to rest my brain this weekend. I don't know. We're going to be at the fundraiser, Salvation Army fundraiser. I don't know. I will try to get as much rest as I possibly can. Trust me. James Bovard at the Post says that Hunter Biden's plea deal proves that the IRS and DOJ helped tilt the 2020 election for Joe. It ties in with this vindication. How did the agency miss Hunter for so long? Hunter's a tax dodger straight out of IRS central casting. And he goes into all the specifics. We don't need to rehash this. I don't want to spend all morning on this, trust me. So you can find the piece for yourself. But I think that is a good point. No matter who wins in November, you can bet Joe Biden will pardon his son during his lame duck final days, bringing the whole sordid Hunter Biden saga to an end. The Bidens will skate. The agencies that aided and shielded them are forever tarnished. Yes, the politicalization of the IRS, the politicalization of the DOJ. We've seen so much politicalization, just of the justice system in general, as we've seen with the lawfare used against former President Trump. And finally, on Hunter Biden, why has it taken so long for Hunter Biden to face consequences, asked the New York Post? That's a great question. They said that this guilty plea at the last minute with no one, prosecutors not knowing, and asking for the Alford plea was just typical, on brand for Hunter. In both his cases and his gun charge trial earlier this year, his lawyers blamed his drug addiction for his decision to commit these crimes. An Alford plea would admit the prosecution has him dead to rights, because it does, but still claim he wasn't really at fault. Nothing ever is. He's never at fault. The general public even with a guilty verdict in his gun case and a near certain one in his tax case, he surely figures Joe will pardon him after Election Day, despite his claims otherwise, since his political career is over come January 21st. Oh, that's right. It's 21st. Yes, thank you. I was thinking it was earlier. The general public has no way to ensure Hunter suffers the full consequences of his actions, but Americans have every right to demand accountability for everyone who shielded him from justice. But that's such a good point that he'll wait till after Election Day because he doesn't want it to be a political issue for Harris. So he'll wait, and then he has till January 21st to pardon his son, and so there will be no real consequences. Now, do you disagree? Also, we talked about this yesterday. Thank you for the waves coming in. We talked about this yesterday. What are your thoughts? Next week, the big story, the debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. What are your thoughts? Yesterday, we've heard from people that are excited, people that still don't think it's happening. I was wrong last time. I didn't think it was going to happen with Biden. And I'm more than willing to admit that I was wrong. I will say that he should have listened to me and not to we'd still be talking about the Biden campaign right now. He would have secured the nomination. But anyway, Harris, when she started asking for different changes, that made me wonder. Now, again, I mentioned it yesterday. I don't think there's going to be some huge, wow, Harris bombed type thing. But she'll do enough to basically keep the focus on fact-checking Trump. Or Trump said that, so the media can focus on that and say Harris did a great job when she needed to. Trump said these lies. It's pretty predictable. I don't think it's I don't know if we'll ever see anything like we saw with the Trump-Biden debate. So it's not going to be something like that. Yeah, I do believe there'll be some word salads. That's just her nature. But a word salad is uncomfortable to watch. It's pretty nonsensical. It's pretty laughable. I don't think it's a deal breaker because I don't think the media focuses on it. I think if you watch it, if the kind of the non-informed voters who are still saying who am I going to vote for at this late of stage, I think it probably doesn't move the needle that much. You might say that was ridiculous. But they've done with her like they did with Biden in the past. Oh, that's old Joe Biden with his gaffes, with his fantastical stories, where if it were Trump, of course, that was a lie, not provable. They'd be interviewing people that used to work at the swimming pool about corn pop and all that stuff. If it were Trump, but with Biden, it's, oh, there's Joe Biden. They're doing the same essential thing with Harris. If you noticed when she had a somewhat word salad in her interview with Dana Bash, it wasn't mentioned. As a matter of fact, that was because the beginning of that was something that they quoted quite a bit. So I don't think that'll be a focus. And how do you fact check one of those word salads? But I don't see that being a thing. Meaning that the media won't cover it that much. It'll be kind of glanced over, and they'll highlight the historic nature of her performance during the debate. I just don't have a lot of high hopes. I don't know if Trump. Let me ask you this: what do you want to see from Trump? We had people weigh in on this the other day. Do you want to see the tough, go at him Trump, or do you want to see the Trump that's more, like the last debate, more reserved, more disciplined? I think we know what Harris wants. Harris wants that moment so badly she can taste it, where she can say, I'm talking, like she did with Pence, because she's kind of a one-trick pony. That when she thinks something works, she does it over and over and over again. That's why some of these statements that she's made that make no sense to you and I, she keeps saying because she thinks it's like a brilliant line. That's what I think she's really hoping for, because that was really the highlight of that debate when she went after, unfortunately, it goes to show you the level of that debate, but that when she said, sir, I'm talking, something like that, because it's twofold. I mean, it shows, hey, I'm assertive, and it also shows here's a person disrespecting a woman who at that point wanted to be VP and at this point is VP. So she wants to get that from Trump. What kind of aggression do you think we'll see from Trump? What, in general, do you want to see? But we have to take another break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us. And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street Recording. Okay, a couple of quick comments from viewers. Most people, by the way, just so I could condense them all, believes that Biden will pardon Hunter Biden. Okay, fact check is all a lie for we people who actually speak the truth. I think it's not ironic. It's interesting when they have to fact check the fact checker. Remember on ABC when the host was saying to Tom Cotton, no, Harris, again, fact checking in real time, which fact checking in real time only seems to happen when they have an interview with a Republican. Interesting how that happens. But they'll say she said something to the extent that Harris has met with those Gold Star families from Afghanistan. And then a couple hours later, they don't call it a fact check at this point, but correction. So they're essentially fact checking themselves at this point. But yes, Republicans tend to be the only ones to get fact check in real time, and a lot of times that is not an accurate quote unquote fact check. So it's not only just misleading in most instances, it's very distracting and very uncomfortable. Trump needs, this is in regards to the debate, Trump needs to shut his mouth and stick with inflation, groceries, gas, shutting the border, and helping us seniors and disabled. Good point. Not disagreeing. What are your thoughts? I think the Trump of the Hillary Clinton debates was very important to throw Hillary off from the old political way of doing things. I think in this instance, if he becomes that kind of Trump, it plays into Harris's hand. Okay. Oh, and here is a big announcement, folks. And you're going to hear it here first. I'm looking forward to this already because it's such a moving and touching event. But the Tri-County First Responders Park in Gang Mills will be holding its annual remembrance ceremony on Wednesday at 11 a.m. at the First Responders Park. This year we'll be honoring Brandon Salyers. Hey, that's wonderful. Of the New York State Police Horseheads Barracks, and Brandon Salyers. I'm going to put words in his mouth. A proud graduate of West High School. Went to school with Brandon Salyers. That's exciting. I'm glad to hear that. And firefighters, EMT, Bobby Joe Richards of the Caton Fire Department as First Responders of the Year. The public, of course, is welcome. Assemblyman Palmisano will be there, as well as others from maybe representatives or guests from Tom O'Mara, Nick Langworthy. It is, if you've not been to this event, I highly recommend it. It is going back to that viewer who mentioned September 11th, and I said that I think we all have a heavy heart on September 11th. This is a perfect way to remember, also to honor what we lost on September 11th, but also to look towards the future and honor our first responders. So again, it is Wednesday at 11 a.m. at the Tri-County First Responders Park in Gang Mills. I will see you there. Okay? All right. Thank you for that. And we'll be promoting that throughout the week. All right. Man, where's this hour going? My goodness. So we talked about Liz Cheney a little bit yesterday. Trust me, we will not be talking about Liz Cheney after this right here. This was on MSNBC's Deadline. Representative Zoe Lofgren. Oh, that's an interesting name. Zoe Lofgren from California was asked by Nicole Wallace, your thoughts on Liz Cheney's endorsement of Kamala Harris yesterday. That's what you call a softball. If you ask a Democrat from California, what do you think, there's your softball, about Liz Cheney's endorsement of Kamala Harris? Because it gives you an opportunity to attack Trump. It gives this person an opportunity to praise Harris. And it gives really an opportunity amongst her friends to be able to say, oh, yeah, I praise the person that is a Republican. It makes us look like we're friends. But all she is helping us out in the cause. And that's what Liz Cheney's doing here. When she's being praised on MSNBC, you might want to question your Republican bona fides. That's all. But this is what Lofgren said. I'm proud of Liz. We worked very hard together on the January 6th committee. Oof, I'm sure you did. She and I are not the same politically. She's a conservative Republican. See how they have to get that conservative in there? Do you agree with that statement? She's a conservative Republican? No, that's just trying to get them to label. Look, she's a conservative Republican and she hates Trump. What is it? Let me ask you this question. I'm just asking questions left and right today. What is it about certain Republicans that love to turn on Republicans? Is it the attention? It's got to be. Are they actually really Republicans? So let me go back to what she had to say. She's a conservative Republican. I'm not. There are a lot of policy issues we don't agree on. One thing we do agree on is the rule of law and protecting the Constitution. And that's why we work so hard on the January 6th committee. Her statement is going to be important for a lot of people. She is so steeped in the Republican Party. I wouldn't say she's super popular with the Republican Party. I remember there were meetings that we would have during the January 6th committee, and we were in the conference room. As we were sitting there, I looked on the wall and realized there was a picture of her father and the president on the wall. That's her roots. She is so Republican in that she would say the only way to honor our Constitution is not just to not vote for Trump, but to vote for the only real alternative, Kamala Harris. It's significant. I think it's brave on the part of Liz. Once again, something I deeply respect about her. You don't normally hear a Democrat respecting a Republican unless that Republican is turning on other Republicans. That's another point to recognize. You wouldn't see, I really respect J.D. Vance. You're not going to see something like that. I find it interesting that apparently the most conservative Republican, steeped in Republicanism, the most conservative Republican, perhaps in our lifetime, definitely in the world today, is telling you to vote for Kamala Harris. Keep that in mind. We're going to tell you what J.D. Vance had to say about that when we come back, because he was tough talking yesterday. He had a few more words to say today. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking, wrapping up hour number 1. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. We've got a lot of comments coming in. I didn't have time to group them all together because I had to find this J.D. Vance story. So we'll do that in the next hour. But keep those comments coming in. J.D. Vance in response to Liz Cheney. Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, like it has to tell us that, slammed Liz Cheney and John McCain's son as rejects from the Republican Party. I don't know. I don't know if J.D. Vance realizes now that maybe someone told him that it turns out Liz Cheney is the most conservative Republican there is. Now that she's told you to vote for Kamala Harris, she is the most conservative Republican. I don't make the rules, folks. And if you don't remember, John McCain's son attacked Trump for visiting Arlington, even though his own father did a campaign ad at Arlington. But we'll continue. The fact that Kamala Harris has gotten a couple of rejects of the Republican Party who have no sway in our party anymore to endorse her, I think speaks low of them and doesn't say anything great about her campaign. I think it speaks pretty low of those Republicans as well. Obviously, quote-unquote Republicans. It's just so typical. There's so many Republicans that do this. It's almost a rite of passage if you're a Republican, where you have to say, what in the world is going on here? So just rejects from the Republican Party. All right, we are out of time for hour number one. We're having a blast. A lot of waves coming in, a lot of comments. Keep them coming in. I do appreciate it. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk with the Gaffer District. We always look forward to that. We're going to learn a little bit about Harvest Fest. Also, I'm probably going to promote the Salvation Army fundraiser on Sunday from 1 to 4 at Nazareth Civic Center a few more times. But we've got a lot to cover with Harris, a lot to cover with Walz as well. Can't forget about Walz. He's avoiding the media as well as Harris is. And we're talking about Trump, a little bit about J.D. Vance, and hopefully some New York State issues. But most importantly, your comments. So please keep them coming in. And as I mentioned, please spread the word on this. On Monday, we'll be talking with Kelly Mormon. She is with the Finger Lakes VA. Let anybody you know that this could relate to, let them know that Kelly Moran's going to be on the program, or Mormon, is going to be on the program on Monday, because she is going to talk about really suicide awareness. September is Suicide Awareness Month, and she's just going to talk about the services that the VA offers to vets and their families. And some of the things they're doing to raise awareness, to get rid of the stigma of mental health issues. It's going to be a very important message. So please, and how timely and appropriate, coming on the week of September 11th. So I'm really glad that Kelly Mormon is on the program on Monday. So I hope that you will spread the word. And we have other guests coming up throughout the week. I'll tell you about those later on. But right now, we have to take our break. Hour number one of Frankly Speaking is in the books. Hour number two, mere moments away. Please stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. And it's hour number two of Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're going to be talking with the Gaffer District here in just a little bit. Okay, a couple of comments here. Many of us that watch other than the mainstream media, shows like Frankly Speaking, it says here, try to get to the truth behind what's actually happening. Thank you. I don't think, I'll tell you, watching the mainstream media, I was thinking about this yesterday, not just when I watch the interviews and they're so hostile towards Republicans, until you're Liz Cheney, the most Republican there is, then you're not hostile anymore. Then it's a love fest because she's bad-mouthing Republicans. But just the way any kind of question and answer is done to a Republican as compared to a Democrat, or just the way every story about Trump is twisted in a way to be a negative. The Associated Press even misquoting J.D. Vance in a reference to the Georgia shooting. I'll tell you about that a little bit later on. But so they're even lying and making things up. It becomes, I can't blame people who zone out, tune out, and say, I don't have the time in my busy schedule, my busy day, to get to the bottom of all this, to get to the truth. Because if you just and remember this is why I talk about the media so much, because it is very frustrating to watch them run out the clock on Harris and just get her across the finish line. Because there are a lot of people that don't have the time to do the research. And what do? They maybe watch the nightly news, the local news, and then the nightly news, maybe. And what are they getting from that national news? They're getting one slanted story after another. So when you're shocked, like I am, to see some of the polls that show Harris gaining, and you go, how could this happen? We know nothing about her. She's doing no interviews. To the layman, they may not even be aware she's not doing interviews. They may not even be aware that she's not done press conferences. They're just seeing praise on her and negative on Trump. And if you watch that all day, every day, not all day, excuse me, if you watch that every day, you are eventually going to be, for lack of a better word, brainwashed. I mean, you think of when you watch the coverage on COVID during the middle of COVID and how that played into so many people's mental health with the doom and the gloom and the depression. What we have here is just the constant beating of the drum of how great Harris is and how bad Trump is. But let's go to our next comment. Cheney has no brains, just like Harris. God help us if Harris wins. This country has already been destroyed and laughed at by other countries, by the Biden-Harris administration. Thank you very much. Next up, I'm not sure if I understand this, if it's a question or not, but a viewer said, I'm so sick of this Russia thing. Is there some word that we can mix together that's media and Democrats? Thank you. Combining like the... okay, let me parse this for a second, and you can respond if you're still watching. Are you sick of them talking about Russia nonstop? Because yes, that has kicked up again, full gear. As there's been so many great pieces reiterating what we said on the program yesterday, they're hyping up Russia again, and downplaying the real dangerous threat of China infiltrating our government. So is that what you're saying? Because I'm getting sick of it too. If you look at CNN this morning on their website, that's all it was pretty much. So many other outlets like that. I don't understand where this is all coming from. I guess they think it works. I'm really not sure. And I know Putin made some kind of phony endorsement, and they're running with that. And then they're saying, I get it. But are you also saying that you're sick of having to say Russia? I don't know if you're asking that. I wish there was a better way to say that. Because saying Russia every time, though it's impactful, it just gets kind of tedious. But let's all put our mind together. I don't even know if you have to mix the word media and Democrats. I think they're kind of interchangeable at this point. One other comment, and I see many more comments coming in. We'll get to those later on. Good morning, frankly. Good morning. We're going to count that. You asked for information on how Trump should react during the debate. And I would say every time she brings up something about her performance, and even when she doesn't, that Trump constantly hammers her on where has she been the last 3.5 years as vice president. You could have made a difference in so many different issues in so many people's lives, and you sat back and stayed hidden and didn't. And you didn't do anything that could have helped normal Americans. Yeah. Why didn't you shut the border down if you're so tough on the border now? If you have a fix for the economy, like you claim you do, why aren't you getting, suppose you guys talk all the time, why do you not have Biden's ear and say, hey, let's start this so the American people don't have to suffer anymore? And then when he does that, point out things that he did during his presidency, things that were better for people. I'm not sure, but some of the policies that made the world safer. Meeting of world leaders and letting them know that we're here and we're not going to put up with their garbage. So at any rate, you could put this into your language anyway, and that's what I kind of did. I cut it down. So thank you very much. I would put it, it says, thank you. And thank you, frankly speaking. Love your program. Well, thank you very much. We have great viewers. Keep those comments coming in. Keep the waves coming in. Hey, and I know I was just talking about media bias real quickly. I missed this. This is old news, but maybe you're aware of it. We all kind of maybe got lost in the shuffle of the Labor Day weekend. But on Friday, the far left, The Nation, published an article, and the New York Post highlighted this. This was last Friday. The Beltway media got its Harris interview. Can we move on now? So this is the suggestion that the only people that wanted an interview with Harris, and it wasn't just Harris, it was with Walz, we should add, that the only people that wanted this were the Beltway media. Which, let's face it, the media weren't criticizing her either. It wasn't the voters who have never actually had an opportunity to vote for her for president. It wasn't them that want to maybe hear some questions answered. Nope. It was the Beltway media who, again, I'd like to see all this reporting by the Beltway media that was demanding an interview. But the Beltway media got its Harris interview. Can we move on now? Hey, she did her interview. Let's move on. The American people, the American voter who's never had an opportunity to vote for her for president of the United States, they don't care. Yes, she had a primary back in 2019. We learned a little bit about her there, and she's completely done a U-turn, flip-flop from just about all those positions now today. But we don't really have to ask her why that's the case, why now she wants to ban or she supports fracking after wanting to ban fracking now that she needs a swing state. So if you want to know about her, if the Democrat voter who, again, never got to vote for her, who actually voted for Biden, and that was ripped away from him, and your vote was ripped away from you, I would think you'd want some answers, but not according to the nation. The only one that wants answers is the Beltway media, who are obviously just so, it's almost attack dogs on Harris nonstop. Now, this is important information, and some of you are not going to like this, but we show all sides here on Frankly Speaking. Kamala Harris's political operation raised $361 million in August. Now, Donald Trump had impressive numbers that I brought to you yesterday, but Harris more than doubles those numbers. Keep this in mind. This is not something to take lightly. We know that big money has arguably probably had the most impact in history in this presidential race, because big money helped boot Biden out, the person the Democrats actually voted for. Big money said, no, your vote doesn't matter. We have the say. So big money helped get Biden out and then helped start the momentum of Harris by dumping all that money they weren't giving to Biden into Harris right at the beginning, so they could say, look at this momentum, and then they've kept it coming. $361 million, folks. That's a lot of money. Easily swamping the $130 million raised by Trump in the same month. The cash stockpiled across Harris's affiliated committees tops the $295 million that Trump's political operation said it had available in its bank, and underscores how much Harris's historic and late-breaking candidacy has energized donors and transformed the 2024 race. This coming from CNN, if you couldn't tell already. If this rate continues, Harris is poised to collect more than $1 billion in the condensed campaign window between becoming the party's de facto nominee in late July and Election Day. She's already raised more than $615 million since Joe Biden ended his re-election bid on July 21st. Last month's haul topped the $310 million that Harris and Democrats raised in July, and it came amid the fanfare of her announcing Tim Walz. Do you think that Tim Walz has added anything to the campaign? I mean, I know I see some signs that say Coach Walz. I don't think he's had quite the, impact they wanted originally. But maybe that's just because he's so quiet. The same with Harris. We have a basement campaign, and people are supporting it with their cash. So $361 million in August. Keep that in mind. All right, we have some more comments coming in, some more waves. We're going to talk. I got one more section before we go to our interview with the Gaffer District. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I've got a lot of great comments coming in. I ran upstairs to get tea so I can have a chance to put them all together. We'll get to them after our interview. Sorry about that. I have a very small window, as you can tell, as I'm out of breath. Okay. Kamala Harris. Now, she's had some very unpopular quotes in her first campaign, some popular policy positions that she had, like banning fracking, those type of things, free healthcare for all, those type of things. Do you remember when she called for a ban on plastic straws? Well, there's a trend with the Harris campaign. The Harris doesn't come right out with, other than fracking, but with some of these and say, no, I don't believe that anymore. I completely flip-flop. She doesn't do it. It'll be somebody from her campaign. And Tom Cotton had that great point on the Sunday shows where, as I think it was Jonathan Karl, was trying to push back on him, saying, well, Harris says she doesn't support that now. He goes, Harris has never said that. Has Harris told you that? It's some anonymous aide texting it out on a Friday evening. So do we know that's what her position is? Well, now, according to campaign staffers, they say that Harris has reversed her 2019 pledge to ban plastic straws for climate change. Now, I understand there's been some issues with the paper straws now, that there's some health effects to that. I didn't read the whole article because it's getting, I don't know. One thing I know, if you have the paper straws, they're annoying. But back in 2019, during a CNN town hall, Harris said, they asked, Do you think we should switch to paper straws? And she acknowledged that it was difficult to drink from. I think we should, yes. I mean, look, I'm going to be honest. It's really difficult to drink out of a paper straw. Like, if you don't gulp it down immediately, it starts to bend. And then the little thing catches it. So we got to kind of perfect that one a little bit more. She called for innovation on plastic alternatives. Innovation is a process. But, let's encourage innovation. I think we can do a little better than some of those flimsy plastic straws. We do need to ban the plastic. So if you ban something, I guess that does encourage innovation. According to a report from Axios, far-left Axios, who just had to cut 10% of its workforce, they said the Kamala Harris campaign says that's no longer her position. Banning plastic straws to protect the environment and marine life is the latest progressive issue on which Harris and her campaign have either declined to comment or changed her position. Many parts of the country have banned plastic straws as concerns have grown about the plastic pollution in ocean and waterways. The Harris campaign says she doesn't support banning plastic straws. She cast the tie-breaking vote on the most consequential legislation to combat climate change and create clean energy jobs in history. And as president, she's going to be focused on expanding that process, the statement added. She joked even then about how bad the paper straws are and the need to come up with better eco-friendly alternatives. So we've got the flip-flopping on fracking. Now, allegedly, it's just coming from her campaign, change on plastic straws. Is anything sacred? Well, Isaac Shore says this, calling her Camelon. I have trouble with this one because it's chameleon, but with chameleon, whatever. You get the idea. Vice President Kamala Harris might be a woman without conviction, like the song Come On Chameleon. Anyway, but she's trying to get away with selling more than a few contradictions. There's nothing normal about Harris's campaign for president. Axios reported on a lengthy fact check by the Harris team to their allies in the press, revising the unpopular policy positions she articulated just a few years ago. Among the assertions made, Harris does not support an electric vehicle mandate. Of course, that's not a fact check. It's an announcement that the vice president has flip-flopped on an issue of enormous importance. So there's another one I had forgot about. Fracking, she's flip-flopped on. The electric vehicle mandate. Back in 2019, Harris co-sponsored a bill that would require automobile manufacturers to produce only electric and hydrogen-powered vehicles, completely phasing out the gas-powered ones that most Americans depend on by 2040. During her campaign for the Democratic presidential nomination, remember when you actually had to run in a campaign for the presidential nomination? Remember when a vote mattered? Anyway, Harris touted her support for an accelerated model under which that transition would be made by 2035. Thompson, from Axios, to his credit, followed up by asking if Harris would sign or veto the bill that she co-sponsored just a few years ago. The campaign didn't respond for several days, and when it did, it declined to comment. So to summarize, a major party's candidate to wield the awesome power of the executive branch is seeking to secure the political benefits of shedding an unworkable position via press release, but refuses to answer any follow-ups about the specifics of her new position. I don't support an electric vehicle mandate, but I just might sign one into law. Did you catch the wink, wink, nudge, nudge? This is what we're dealing with, and again, the media has no concerns, no issues. And again, this is typical from the media, but it should be even more glaring when you have a candidate that didn't have to go through the primary scenario, didn't have to get voted on to be in the position that she's in. And the media has no issue with her flip-flopping. When they know from that wink, wink, nudge, nudge, they know that she has to say these things to get elected. They know that the Democrats have to sound more like Republicans to get elected. They know that when she gets in office, that she will not adhere to it. Because how would she adhere to her policy today when she can't adhere to the policy positions she had in 2019? So if those change so significantly and drastically, I mean, complete 180s, what does it look like on January 21st? What's her position that day as compared to September 6th? Harris's doublespeak is brazen, says Isaac Shore, but not entirely without political merit. With the media behind her, she believes, perhaps correctly, that she can have her cake and eat it too. Maybe if she reimagines her beliefs via edict and not with her voice, she can both convince moderate independent voters to buy her backtrack away from the far left and get progressives to understand that once she's in the Oval Office, she'll rejoin the team. Because I think that's a good point. She's not saying these things. It's her campaign saying these things. She's not coming out forcefully and saying, no, don't ban plastic straws. No, I'm not for an electric vehicle mandate. Maybe if she adopts the accent of some exaggerated caricature, like we've been seeing, in front of some crowds, but heaven forbid others, she can stop Democrats bleeding with that demographic. It's the kind of shallow, cynical approach that only someone as shameless as Harris could conceive of. Can you imagine replying no comment in a job interview? Can you imagine faking an accent you associate with your interviewer's race? These are things Harris has done. And I've got to add, I cannot imagine saying no comment as the potential president of the United States, that your official position at your campaign is no comment on something that is so important, something that is so, well, really, that would change America as we know it. Harris is comfortable doing all that while making the case for handling the nuclear codes. Politicians lie, twist, and change to suit their needs. This is a truth as old as it is self-evident. But Kamala Harris's attempt to get to November 5th without articulating a clear vision for the country, or even who she is so flagrantly disrespectful of the voters as to astonish even the most grizzled skeptics. Yeah, and it's extra disrespectful to the voters because the voters have yet to have a vote on her. So she's saying, hey, I know you didn't see the primaries. There was no primaries this go around. I've completely changed my position from 2019. Oh, no one voted for me, but I'm still not going to answer your questions. When she last ran for the White House, she expressed support for doing away with private health insurance, ICE, the defund the police movement, and the Green New Deal. Now she says that while she supports none of those initiatives, her, quote, values have not changed. There's another one of those winks saying to the progressives, don't worry, I'm with you. It's no surprise that Harris wants to repent of her disastrous 2020 campaign. It's so disastrous that no one in the party wanted her. And yet, here they are. You have no choice. And we're told there's energy around her. Even though after she never received a vote, she had to drop out before even Iowa in 2019. And now they kept Biden and his health secret because they knew how bad of a candidate she is. But they see, hey, we can get this across the finish line with the media's help, with her constantly changing beliefs, with no interviews, with no press conferences, just scripted events. Man, it is, like Isaac Shore said, it's astonishing even for the most grizzled skeptics. It's no surprise that Harris wants to repent of her disastrous campaign from 2020, which actually ended in 2019. And it would be heartening if Harris and her party were backing away from the destructive agenda embraced in 2020. But the backtrack is about as convincing as that accent of hers. Harris's insulting attempt to hold on to that crazy wing of her party while putting moderates back in should trouble both groups, as well as raise this question. Just how little does she think of the American people? The way things are going, she's got to think, hey, I haven't had to get votes yet, so she made it this far with no real consequences. And right now the media is saying, hey, just like I had that article from The Nation, hey, we got our interview. Can we move on? And that's why many have speculated that there will be only one interview. All right, we're going to go to break. And then when we come back, we're going to hear from the Gaffer District. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Akam, and we are broadcasting from the Hesselson Studio here on Historic Market Street in Corning. And speaking of Historic Market Street, where in the world did the summer go? If we're talking about Harvest Fest, we can't
just look in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
That's where it went.
It is unbelievable. I cannot believe we're talking Harvest Fest, but it's bittersweet because it kind of signals the end of summer, but it's such a fun event.
It is. And boy, I don't know if you've realized this, but it just seems to grow bigger and better every year.
And what is really unique about it, as compared to maybe other towns, everything with the exception of one thing is absolutely free.
Yeah.
I mean, and we'll get to that exception, but it's an exception worth spending the money for. We're talking Harvest Fest coming up on Friday, September 20th and Saturday, September 21st. So let's start with some of the things, just what's new this year.
Well, this year, last year, Frank, we had a car show for the first time down in Block 5 near Butcher's Son and all of that. Well, that was super popular, and we're going to have another one this year on Friday night, and then that one on Saturday. It's a chance for folks to come and stroll and look at cool cars and grab a bite to eat, and the live music on all 5 blocks again.
Live music, as I said, so much. One thing I like every year, and it's become a tradition to make sure to see as many as I can, is pick your favorite scarecrow. I don't know why I enjoy that so much.
Can you believe some of the creativity?
I can't.
Yeah, likewise. And our guests really love trying to decide which one is the best. A lot of debates about that.
Sure. It gets a little heated.
A little bit.
But there is live music throughout the weekend, and it's such an opportunity to see your neighbors, of course, but opportunity to maybe shop and dine at places you haven't been to in a while.
Yeah, I love it when the restaurants come up with some great specials, and I think the people that have come to our harvest event year over year, there was a group of people that came from the Philadelphia area, I think it was last year, in a hot debate over where you could get the best martini.
Okay.
And there where you could get the best, barbecue. So I'm not exactly sure who won that debate, but I bet you the people enjoying it.
I'm guessing as the debate went on and the more martinis tried, the more heated the debates became. Yeah. And they all started to taste really good.
And then they got munchy.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good debate to have in today's world, especially. You mentioned this, and I don't want to put you on the spot. How long has Harvest Fest been going on?
Well, an iteration of it, because it used
changed
to be
through the years.
I want to say close to 20.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah,
I remember
to 20.
It's changed a lot, but as you mentioned, it gets better year after year and bigger year after year.
Yeah, and I think the bigger is the amount of people who come to this event, have a blast, and then tell their friends and family.
Exactly.
And they all come back. And it is a rain or shine event. Yeah. And I hope I didn't just jinx us, knock, knock. Even if it's a little cloud cover, it's a fantastic day.
It's still a blast. And something I saw, and let's talk first because I don't want to keep hiding this. We talked about the one event that does cost, but that's worth the investment, and that's a hayride around. Talk about fall, right? What's more fall than a hayride?
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how old you are. No. That's something you really, really enjoy. And we've partnered with those folks for many years because they also do the Crystal City Christmas carriage rides, and they're top notch.
Yes,
and people really do enjoy it.
And then I don't know if this is new this year, but it caught my attention. Not that I'm any good at it, but so many people talk about cornhole.
Yes.
And there's a cornhole tournament at the Radisson, brought to you by the Radisson. Is that new this year?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it is. They said they were doing it, and there's a club, I think, that's helping make it happen. And they're like, what do you think? It's like, absolutely. Like you said, it's got a big following.
And people might not believe me, but if you're down here to Harvest Fest, watch it. Because when they're so good, I mean, I've caught myself spending way too much time if I accidentally catch it on like ESPN or something, and you can't turn away. It's a whole different level of you playing with your buddies in the backyard.
It's one of those things, at least in my perspective. It's like, yeah, that's easy.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out.
No. Yeah, join that tournament. We'll see how easy it is. But I thought that was neat. Now, that is Saturday. I want to mention that. And I think you can register online. I don't want people to miss out because I know that is very popular.
Yes, if they go to gafferdistrict.com, there is a link to get there.
Now, again, it's a great time. What do you personally, because you have a busy 2 days, 3 days, what do you look forward to the most?
I think I'm a broken record, but honest to God, it's the truth. Whether it's Harvest or any of our other events, I absolutely love seeing the event unfold on someone's face, whether it's a little kid or a senior citizen or anywhere in between. The fact that people come here, they can discover what an incredible experience this downtown is, and have a great time at an event. Yeah. And I I could be wrong, but I think if you come and you experience an event like Harvest, where it is free with the exception of a hayride,
right.
and you can spend your hard-earned money on great food and great shopping, and you want to come back,
Yeah.
that does it for me.
I agree. I totally agree. And the memories that people make. And,
Yeah.
And you couldn't ask for a more beautiful area this time of year. So it is a very memorable. I know you see so many people taking pictures, and there's a farmer's market aspect to it, and all the vendors. We don't even have time to mention all the vendors.
No. But well over 120.
Wow. So this really is an all-day event. If you want to see everything, you can't just hop in for an hour.
No, and I'd say come Friday night, enjoy dining on the street and the entertainment and everything Friday night, and then come back and spend the whole day on Saturday, and you're not going to be disappointed.
And like we said, live music throughout the day. You can find out all the schedule, and I have it here printed out somewhere right on the website.
Yes, absolutely. And follow us on social media. Between our marketing manager and our events manager, they come up with some pretty cool stuff.
They do.
I'm a little biased. But it's like, man, I would have never thought of that.
Yeah.
But it catches people's attention.
Of course.
And, then we love it when people share their photos from the event.
Oh, yeah. And you know what I think is interesting about the Gaffer District in general, and to kind of switch a little bit here, but we're still talking Harvest Fest from Friday, September 20th and Saturday, September 21st. I like that the Gaffer District is always adding new events, that it's not just, hey, we've got these great events that have been around 20 plus years. It's also, hey, this year let's get the Gus Macker here, or whatever the case may be, to just add more things to do. Sometimes we joke that it seems like we're busy every weekend here.
Yeah, and
it's almost,
that's a good thing.
Yeah.
We are here to basically tell the world about the Gaffer District, so they come here and they have a great time, and they invest in our local economy through our locally owned businesses. It's not all fun and games, as they say. There's a reason.
Sure.
This community is steeped in a history of small business. And we're all about that continuing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. How's the summer been overall? Just busy?
It seems like it's been really busy. I've seen a lot of happy people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Everybody talking about each of the events. That's what's kind of fun. Hey, did you go? To whatever the event is, and then you hear, I did this. So that's always been a part of kind of visiting any of the events. I know we'll be talking about future events in the future. Yeah. But before we go, Harvest Fest, again, September 20th and September 21st. What would you say to someone who's never been?
You may have thought that you have been to like the best harvest event.
Yeah.
I challenge you to come and check ours out,
like that.
Because I dare say you're going to realize this, no kidding, is the best combination of experiences in a really beautiful place.
Yes, and block off some time. Enjoy, like you said, our great restaurants, all the great stores. I mean, we might as well. We're jumping through seasons so quickly. You can buy Christmas gifts already if you want. That's just jump right to it. But it's a great event, and that's why I'm so glad you could be on the show. Best of luck, because you're busy that day.
We love it though.
Yeah.
It's a blast, even if you are working.
Yeah.
And if anybody feels like volunteering, hey,
that's right.
We'll help them out.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that, because you do need volunteers for all of these events,
yes,
correct?
we do.
Yeah.
We're a very small team, so we need a lot of help to pull it all together. Okay. And we have been very blessed to have some amazing volunteers.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to volunteer, this is a nice place to volunteer. Harvest Fest, I mean, I'm sure people come back year after year.
It is. It is. And, it's not like we're going to work you to the bone for 8 to 10 hours straight. Right. It's just a couple hours shift, and then you can go out and enjoy it with everybody else.
And where should they find out more? At the website to volunteer?
Website, or just give us a call at the office.
Okay.
And ask for Ginny.
There we go. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We'll see you at Harvest Fest. There we go. I made it through the whole thing and then screwed up right at the end. Well, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Frank.
All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. Boy, that Harvest Fest sounds fun. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. We are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and boy, do we have a lot of comments to get to from viewers. Thank you for all these comments, by the way. Okay, first up. The mainstream media is owned by the government, but they're also all leftists, so lie about Republicans but make Democrats sound like they actually aim to help us, and they don't. Follow the money and you'll only see and read lies. By the way, I'm an independent and conservative. Choose the best person, and it's not Harris. Thank you very much. I think the thing that makes it so frustrating to watch with the media is we know unfortunately, the power that they actually have, whether or not some in the conservative world want to admit it. Next up, this was in reference to a comment about Russia. The viewer says, what I meant when I said Democrats in the media, they're doing more damage than Russia. Well, they're playing right into the hands of Russian propaganda and China too, by focusing on non-stories about Russia and ignoring, and I have an article on this we're going to get to in just a second, ignoring the real serious threat of China, as we learned this week, infiltrating the highest level of New York government. Continuing. Oh, and yes, some of these people have lots of money. They sure do. Well, I don't have as much money, but I have been given to Harvey in Florida. Oh, cool. That's going to be an interesting race facing Adam Schiff. And I have given money to the woman running against AOC. It might only be $25, but it means something. I totally agree. I think that's one of the, whatever you want to say about it, one of the most impactful ways you can help a candidate. Okay, next up. Given that Democrats tax the heck out of all of us, but more heavily tax big business, where is this big money coming from? And what does big money have to gain unless this money is coming from foreign governments or individuals? Well, you figure just when it comes to government contracts and it's essentially lobbying, really. So they have a lot to gain from the big spending of the government. Next up, the news every day is getting blue washed. I like that. While mainstream media blue washes the news, frankly speaking, exposes the gray. Thank you so much. Hey, that's a nice way of putting it. Thank you. I consider myself as an anti-mainstreamist. In this order of discrimination, CNN, CBS, ABC, NBC, and PBS. I support my focus on Fox and their affiliated programming lineup. They're the cracks in the mainstream wall of spin. I agree. PBS, yes. That's a good one to throw in there because it's not just being funded by viewers like you, but by all of you, whether or not you're a viewer, by taxpayer dollars. And finally, although the money that the Democrats have raised is quite impressive, if you think about where the government spends money, it is reduced to a negative number. They should use it to buy tickets for the Salvation Army's benefit luncheon. I couldn't agree more. That would be a much better way to use the money. And since you gave me the opportunity, don't forget this Sunday is the Salvation Army of Corning and their benefit picnic being held at Nazareth Civic Center right here in Corning from 1 to 4, being catered by Corning Catering, and everybody knows the delicious food at Corning Catering. There's going to be great silent auctions. There's going to be music from Corning Painting Post School. There is going to be some politicians, perhaps, because it's all to celebrate. Well, it's all to celebrate the 140 years of the Salvation Army being in Corning. That's what it's really about. But it's also, as I've mentioned, a way to help raise funds because the kettle campaign was not as successful in years past. So just being honest with you, as we heard from Mick yesterday, that does not mean they're still not providing all the great services that they provide for our community. It just means that they're doing it on what would be called generously a shoestring budget. So if you'd like to help, it's not too late to buy tickets. They're just $15, and you can get them at Brown Cigar Store. You can get them over at the Salvation Army on Denison Parkway. If you see me in the window, you can knock on the window. I've got some to sell, or right there at the door. So please come on out. It's going to be a fun event. So thank you for all those comments. I see others coming in. We'll get to in one of our last breaks. I already have to take another break. But let me get to this real quick. Dan McLaughlin says, Russia, it's back, says the Harris-Biden administration, and all the mainstream media says it as well. And just in time for the fall election season. Once again, Democrats want to talk about Russia election interference. Now, I don't want to get into all of that, but what they're saying is they're focusing on this and not the, as Dan McLaughlin puts it, the Chinese dragon in the room. Chinese influence has penetrated deep into American politics in the years since Hunter and Jim Biden went into business with a state-run Chinese company. And, as we learned in New York just the other day, and they go through the history of it here. You can find it at the New York Post. It's a great piece. But it says, it says here, the agencies issued a joint statement warning, we have observed increasingly aggressive Iranian activity during this election cycle. That's been ignored as well. Iranian hackers attacking Trump. But just wrapping this up. But of all the scandals, the Chinese influence operation ought to worry us the most. China is bigger, richer, and more sophisticated than Russia, Iran, or the others. It's our chief geopolitical rival and the senior partner in its alliance with Russia and Iran. Maybe it's time we start saying China, China, China. So to that viewer's comment. All right, taking a break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. Stay with us. And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I appreciate you joining us. Another comment from a viewer. Another avoidable shooting. I understand why the Democrats are against hardening our schools, but why don't the Republicans push for hardening all of our schools, not just some, and protecting the most vulnerable in our country? We harden all federal and state buildings, including the Social Security office and big flats. We harden most high school level sporting events. We harden our airports, etc. But we won't harden our schools. History tells us that people don't tend to attempt gun violence at areas that are known to be protected by armed security. We also know that the only thing that really works to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, which happened in the Georgia tragedy. Frank, I know this is a controversial issue, and no one needs to be on the wrong side of it in this upside-down world, but getting people to think and act could be very important to saving lives. I think that's one of the problems with conversation so often where maybe perhaps the media, certain politicians, they benefit from us not being willing to have the conversation. So I understand what you're saying, Ken. I think there has to be a conversation. And if you notice, just to tie into what you were saying, having the conversation was J.D. Vance, and the AP brazenly lied about what he had to say. Again, trying to scare people away from having the conversation. A spokesman for J.D. Vance blasted the Associated Press for publishing a headline Thursday that implied the Republican vice presidential candidate had dismissed the school shooting. The AP, well, I gotta be specific with this. This is what the statement said. This is yet another example of the fake news media brazenly lying about a Republican politician. Senator Vance said exactly the opposite of what the Associated Press claimed. It should come as no surprise that the AP lost any and all credibility it had years ago, because they will lie about literally anything in order to prop up the Democrats. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris has called for all police officers to be removed from schools, putting children all over America at risk. It's yet another example of how Kamala Harris's weak, failed, and dangerous liberal agenda makes her unfit for office. Now, he was at a rally where he remarked about the recent mass shooting that took place in Georgia. This is what Vance said. I don't like that this is a fact of life. But if you are a psycho and you want to make headlines, you realize that our schools are soft targets. And we have got to bolster security at our schools. We've got to bolster security. So if a psycho wants to walk through the front door and kill a bunch of children, they're not able. While reporting on that quote that I just read to you, the AP appeared to insinuate Vance called school shootings a fact of life in a callous or dismissive way. Quote, J.D. Vance says school shootings are a fact of life, calls for better security, the headline reads. Now, one Twitter user saying, misleading headline, the full quote is, I don't like that this is a fact of life. AP later replaced both the headline and the post made on Twitter about it. The new headline reads, J.D. Vance says he laments that school shootings are a fact of life and calls for better security. The post replaces an earlier post that was deleted to add context to the partial quote from Vance. So they have gotten to the point when, after being called out, they fact check their fact checks in a way. The Harris-Walz campaign responded by attacking Vance and former President Trump, saying yesterday Vice President Harris said it doesn't have to be this way in response to another senseless school shooting. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance think school shootings are, quote, a fact of life, and we have to get over it. Harris said. Can you imagine that? Have to get over it? Folks, it's sickening. But the AP did their job, didn't they? They put a misleading quote that now Harris can run with. And guess what? I hate to say it, but a lot of people aren't doing the deep dive, doing the research into finding out what the actual quote said, what J.D. Vance actually said. They're either seeing what Harris's campaign said, or they're seeing what that Associated Press line said. It is despicable, it's disgusting, but it's all part of a calculated effort. And Harris jumped on the opportunity. One other thing. How am I doing on time? Where do we want to go from here? Oh, this is just from yesterday. A quick update, because I sometimes think that some of these people are watching, frankly speaking, seeing our good ideas and putting them into a article. I had mentioned that Tim Walz had some family members that came out in support of Trump. They had pretty cool shirts on that said "Walz for Trump," and there's been his brother didn't exactly endorse Trump, but said he does not believe a single thing that his brother believes in, and that his brother's not fit to serve. And I said, well, why do they interview all the Trump relatives that hate Trump, but the Walz story's silent unless you go to conservative outlets? He mentions, Joe Concha from the New York Post mentions that picture that I showed you yesterday. Family members denouncing their relatives who run for or serve as president is nothing new in today's political world. Barack Obama had it happen. His half-brother, who was, I think, also his best man in his wedding, supports Donald Trump. Several of the Kennedy clan have publicly proclaimed their lack of support for RFK Jr. Donald Trump's niece, and they were interviewed a lot, Donald Trump's niece, Mary, has built a lucrative career around writing books and hosting podcasts and running the so-called news outlets who will have her with a singular focus of bashing the former president in the most personal way, despite not having spoken to him for years. Yes, she's cast as a Trump insider. But when it comes to any member of the Walz family who opposes Tim Walz's candidacy while publicly supporting Trump, there's zero interest by the media in putting any of them on camera to give them the Mary Trump treatment. This is also true of Jeff Walz, Tim's older brother, who the Post exclusively reported is 100% opposed to his ideology and says Tim is not the type of character who should make major decisions about the future of the country. And let's not forget those members of the Minnesota National Guard who served with Walz and who absolutely went off on him this week as they described how he abandoned them when he learned that they were being deployed to a war zone. It should also note that each paper has written several glowing features on Mary Trump, but nothing from the New York Times or Washington Post on any of this. The media selection bias has been patently grotesque this election season. Here's a big example. When Harris became the de facto nominee after Biden bowed out, conservatives quickly pointed to her record on illegal immigration, backing policies that allowed more than 12 million people here illegally, including hundreds on the terror watch list. But instead of pointing out all the ramifications of this crisis from a humanitarian to national security perspective, many in the media jumped to oddly defend Harris by insisting she was never the border czar. But here's President Biden declaring that she was in 2021. I don't have to go through that. But also the same when they had that headline, J.D. Vance tries to tether Harris to the Biden administration. She is the VP, for heaven's sakes. So, and that's why the media why won't the media hold Harris accountable on these major campaign issues? We know the reason. Because doing so might help Trump get elected again. To many in this business, the media business, that's simply unacceptable. Just like it's unacceptable to interview anyone in Tim Walz's orbit, his family, his former National Guard unit, about just how unfit they believe him to be and to be anywhere near that White House. We have to take our last break. Stay with us. Wrapping up today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Wow, time flies, folks. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on Marcus Street in Corning. Couple quick things. Buckle in. Trump says he'd create a government efficiency commission led by Elon Musk to audit the entire federal government. The mainstream media, going back to what we've talked about all morning, running with the Russia thing. Did you see what Putin did? That he endorsed Kamala Harris? This is what he said. This is Putin. Our favorite, if you can call it that, was the current president, Mr. Joe Biden. But he was removed from the race, and he recommended all his supporters to support Miss Harris. Well, we will do so. We will support her. She laughs so expressively and infectiously that it means that she is doing well. He also criticized Trump for replacing so many restrictions and sanctions against Russia like no other president has ever introduced before him. Anyway, so that's what they're running with. A longtime California Democratic leader, a longtime former California Democratic legislative leader, announced Wednesday she no longer recognizes her party, while noting she still considers many of its historical figures, including John F. Kennedy, her heroes. Today I say goodbye, adios. I've had enough, she said in an interview. I'm now another near lifelong Democrat who is joining the growing number of people who are leaving the Democrat Party. Today, I joined the Republican Party to make America great again, and I'm ready to do my part as America prepares to vote. She claimed she could not stand by as Democrats took a giant leap to authoritarianism and censorship. Wow. And no coverage of that. We are out of time. Folks, thank you for joining us all week long. On Monday, don't forget, Kelly Mormon from the VA will join us to talk about Suicide Prevention Month, which is September. Do not miss that. Thank you, the Gaffer, for coming in today, telling us about Harvest. Also, I really look forward to seeing you at the Salvation Army fundraiser from 1 to 4 on Sunday at Nazareth Civic Center. Not too late to get tickets, but if you wait till the last minute, if you're like me, you can buy tickets at the door. Please do come over and say hi. I'll be probably at the fundraising table or the silent auction table and doing a little MC work. So please stop by and say hi. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday morning starting at 6 a.m. with Frankly Speaking. I look forward to it already.